My name is Dakota Fozzard, and I am a white woman in my early 30s. And today I use she, her, hers pronouns. And today I want to talk to you about food sovereignty because if you're like me, you might be wondering, what is it? I'm going to illustrate some of the themes of food sovereignty through three stories, and then we'll look at the definition. The first story is about the Akimoota Nation, or also called the Pima Indians. Prior to their large-scale displacement, they had lots of Pima people lived and farmed in permanent villages along the Gila and Salt Rivers in what is now Arizona. They had the most technologically advanced canal irrigation system in the Americas at the time, and their food system was so productive that it was dubbed the granary of Arizona. When white settlers and homesteaders and businesses started to arrive, they were allowed to claim legally 640 acres of land as long as they improved upon the land. They started to divert a lot of water from the Pima agricultural system for their own fields, and this caused a widespread disruption to their food system, the Pima food system, and a deadly famine occurred from 1891 to 1904. Many Pima people perished, and many were forced to leave their traditional lands. As an American Indian historian and expert in water policy, David DeJong put it, they were a wealthy people who had always been able to provide for themselves, and now they couldn't. In 2004, full century after this widespread water theft, Congress has acknowledged this theft and has restored some of the rights to the water for the Pima people and allocated some funds to start rebuilding the canal systems. The second story is about 40 acres and a mule, and this was a Special Field Order 15 in 1865 issued by William Tecumseh Sherman, known for Sherman's March to the Sea through Georgia and South Carolina. He had a lot of tag-alongs. They were enslaved people to his army who were following the promise of freedom that the Union Army represented. This was a problem for him. He was a notorious white supremacist, and he wanted to find a place for these people to go rather than having them be his problem, or his thing that he needed to take care of with his army. So he issued this order and unilaterally set aside tracts of confiscated land from white Southerners for African American families, and it was 40 acres per family, plus assistance from the Army in obtaining loans for livestock, such as mules. This could have been a blueprint for Reconstruction to resettle formerly enslaved people and give them an economic opportunities in life. But unfortunately, the South disagreed with this fundamentally, and the North disagreed with it economically. So this plan of Sherman's dissolved rather than was expanded. And after the war, most of the confiscated land was returned to white property owners. 150 years after the constitutional 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery, Asheville was one of the first American cities to vote in favor of reparations in 2020. This was an acknowledgement of the city's role in the disempowerment, disinvestment, and discrimination of African American communities. And this will have to include economic reparations rather than just a political statement, but hopefully will also include land rematriation, which would recognize the long-term land stewardship by people of color in North Carolina. The last story is about Western North Carolina's first Latin agricultural cooperative. It's was founded by Delia Jovel Dubon, a Salvadorian immigrant and entrepreneur. It's called Tierra Fertil Cooperative, and it aims to collectively empower the Latin American community, farm workers and farmers in Western North Carolina. It's a cooperative, which means the employees themselves own and control the business. There is democratically shared profits and decision-making systems. And it also means that the workers themselves get to enjoy the fruits of their own labor, which is important because most of the food in America is grown at the hands of Latin American farm workers and for very low pay for big corporations, and many can't even afford to eat the food that they grow themselves. So, cooperativism, according to Delia, is a model of social economy that helps empower people who have barriers economically as individuals, but not necessarily as a collective. Tierra Fertil was leasing land for their operation, and they've known for some time that they were going to lose access to that land. This is a common problem with land leasing. Farmers can invest lots of money and time and energy into the business, the infrastructure, the soil, and it can be taken away if it changes ownership or owners change their mind. Tierra Fertil did know they were going to lose their land. They had been trying to find another permanent place to be and buy their own land. Earlier this year in 2025, they have been able to acquire some land in Leicester, North Carolina, and now they are going to resume growing culturally relevant crops and permanently be able to work more on economic development and social justice for the Latin community in this region. And I want to end with a quote from Delia. She said, just 4 years ago, the idea of an agricultural cooperative led by landless Hispanic workers seemed like an unattainable dream. So all of the themes in these stories connect to food sovereignty, which was defined by La Via Campesina in 1996 at the World Food Summit as the right of peoples to healthy and culturally appropriate food produced through ecologically sound and sustainable methods, and their right to define their own food and agricultural systems. So I want to bring up food security for a second here. This is another commonly used term in this sphere. And food sovereignty is differentiated from food security by because of its focus on where food comes from and how food is controlled and distributed, as well as access to food, which is what food security typically focuses on. So, for example, you can have food security in a prison or a dictatorship, but you can never have food sovereignty because you don't have autonomy over your own food system. Food sovereignty has 6 main pillars: building knowledge and skills, localizing food systems, working with nature, valuing food providers, focusing on food for all people, and building local control and autonomy. The stories that I told here demonstrate how social and economic justice are tied intrinsically to land rights and to food sovereignty, and how all of these things are meshed together into one concept. Food sovereignty, it can demonstrate what land, has and can offer to a community, how important that control and ability to steward land is to sovereignty, food sovereignty. And I hope through these stories, the concept of food sovereignty is a little clearer than mud now. Thank you for listening.